I don't know what I'm doing.
Mantus, you're on the air.
I know it.
You've got a guest.
Yes. So, hey, I'm Mantus, hail Satan, and welcome to the Pox Show, starring Mantus and not Pox. And not Socks either. Yeah, happy Samhain season. So we're here with Nicole. Hey, what do you want? What do you like your last name to be?
Solomon is usually it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm very pleased to introduce our special guest for the evening, Nicole Solomon.
Yay! Hey, everybody.
Hello.
I'm so happy to be here.
Awesome. We're happy to have you here. Have you watched any of the new She-Ra?
Oh, I have watched only all of the new She-Ra, which has nothing whatsoever to do with what I decided to name a kitten.
Oh, okay. All right.
Couple years.
All right. I just fucking love the new She-Ra.
I adore the new She-Ra, and that might maybe have something to do with why I was like, you know what would be a good name for a kitten? Like a nice feisty kitten.
Yeah.
Maybe
yeah.
Glimmer, you know?
Glimmer, yeah.
And,
it's throwing
actually,
sparkles everywhere.
Exactly. And that is so much what life is like, except instead of sparkles, it's cat hair and maybe like nail shavings. You know,
totally,
how they leave those around? Yeah.
Like they're like sparkle residue, you know. That's the part they never address. I feel like it was a place they could have like added a couple of little extra hints about, you know, what are the weak points in the script? Not enough dealing with sparkle residue.
That's really true. That was a real missed opportunity.
So I have some fun questions that have been handed to me on a notepad. Well, pieces of a notepad. The top question says, and I quote, "Another film episode. I'm having trouble deciphering what exactly I'm supposed to get out of that." The next line, which I think can pop into the first line of another film episode, is it just says "Lady Filmmaker." Now, I'm going to let that one go because Nancy wrote that, and she is a lady.
And Nancy's wonderful. So when Nancy says that, it's great.
Absolutely. So, Lady Filmmakers, phone sex films.
Who really answers those 1-900 adult chat lines?
Oh, I love Long Island.
You die to talk to her. Is she in danger or deadly? Small talk.
Neighbors were shocked at the scene witnessed through the window before police arrived. Pornography, bizarre marital aids, and a lot of blood.
Small talk. Based on true life events.
I will de-spine him. I will rip off his balls and shove them up his anus.
You know what, dude? I really want you to not do that. I just want him to leave me alone.
But he's not, Tanya.
The story is true. Small talk.
Do that, Tanya?
What?
Something happened in my head when I was talking to him earlier, and just now it happened again.
Small talk.
Baby, calm down.
What do you think you're doing?
Bizarre and brutal.
You're not blonde?
Lovely, alluring, lethal. Sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will really slay you. Small talk. There's no such thing as just talk. She will blow your mind.
And we're back. We're back from the clip. That was really great. Let's talk more about it. I understand that Small Talk is part of a series of phone sex films. Okay, so...
I mean, insofar as I have my little project I'm doing where I've decided there's such a thing as phone sex films, a thing I have not seen anybody else in the past try to codify. I did bring some visual aids, though, to help with this, because Nancy had mentioned might talk about some of this. Small Talk is a movie I just made because I wanted to make it, but that is about a phone sex operator. The main
Not because
character.
you were compelled to make it because it was part of your graduate thesis.
Well, actually, a big part of why I went to graduate school was kind of reverse of that, was to make this film. Because
Interesting.
I had an idea for this film. I had been doing some memoir writing about working in this industry myself, and came to kind of realize that I did not want to write a memoir about it, because to write a marketable memoir, you have to write about yourself and your personal life, and I don't want to do that.
Who does?
So, no, who the fuck wants to do that? So I started getting these horror visuals in my head, though, as I was doing some of this autobiographical writing. Can't imagine why at all. And I was like, you know what? Rather than writing a memoir about being a phone sex operator, why don't I just make a horror movie about being a phone sex operator?
Oh, that's
I've
awesome.
never seen one of those. And I was ignorant, though, because actually quite a few did exist at the time I was doing this, but none of them were necessarily in circulation or easy to watch. So there were reasons I wasn't familiar with them.
You know, and ultimately it doesn't matter whether or not you're doing something that someone else has done, because ultimately what you're doing is the thing that you're doing. You could do the exact same thing and it would be a completely different take. You know?
I agree. And also I was not doing the exact same thing, because I'm watching all these other movies now. That's the project I think we're getting to with the visual aids. And I was not doing the same thing that most of these movies were doing at all. Most of these movies were kind of late 80s, early to mid 90s, kind of Skinamax type things.
Of course.
With some exceptions. And yeah, that wasn't what I was doing, weirdly.
Oh, that's interesting. So then did you feel at the time when you were in graduate school, were there any particular hurdles, or did you feel, how was like the atmosphere as far as like, we're kind of post, I don't want to say we're post Me Too, because we're not post Me Too, although the culture may have moved past the Me Too movement just out of a discomfort with really actually wanting to deal with all of the problems that the Me Too movement has exposed. So on that level, we're post Me Too, but at least there's some awareness now, right? What was it like as far as when you were making your, when you were at City College in the grad program, as trying to, do this as a lady?
I learned so much. I would say it's complicated, because it's not just about being a lady. It's about being a lady doing certain kinds of subject matter. And I will say, first off, that there were a lot of people at City College who were amazing. I made a lot of friends there who continue to be my friends, who I continue to work with a lot. There were a lot of people who actually did support this film.
Right.
And I am so very grateful to all of them. They helped me out a lot, because there were also a lot of people who did not support this film, including some of the staff I might have had, some of the people who were supposed to be kind of mentors to me, really tried to convince me not to make the movie I wanted to make, but rather to make a different movie that would be more the kind of movie they might want to see. And when I
like
said
a Skinamax movie.
Like that, or I was told that I couldn't have some of the gory scenes happen live action, that I would have to do them animated.
All right.
Because it was just too much to ask people to accept. I was told to take all of the supernatural horror elements out of the movie and just make it like a psychological thriller about a woman going crazy instead.
Right.
I also got a lot of feedback that I really, really needed to make this movie be an origin story about how some woman I'm asking the audience to identify with and follow through this story could possibly have gotten this job in the first place. Because how could that possibly happen? How could somebody possibly do a job like that unless, how?
Like no one ever
I
makes
don't
that
know.
story. No one ever makes that story about like somebody who works at middle management at like, Purdue, or whatever.
Oh, they don't. And I did bring this up, and that was not a compelling argument to these people
Right.
because they were like, but that's what I want to see. And then I would tell them, well, you're not the target audience for this film, and they could not accept that answer. And
Right.
that's one of the main lessons I think I learned about being a lady filmmaker is there's certain demographics who are used to being very centered
Yeah.
in most media making. And if you say, hey, you're welcome to come along for the ride, I'm very happy to have you watch my movie, but you're not actually the core audience I have in mind that I'm trying to please and that I really care if they think I got it right or not. You're not actually in the category of people where you don't know anything about the sex
Right.
industry or being a sex worker or doing phone sex or anything like that. So actually your 2 cents is not the one I'm prioritizing over all others. I'm more interested in people who've worked phone sex most primarily, and beyond that, people who've worked service industry jobs.
Right.
Like that was my target audience. Some people did not like hearing that.
Oh wow.
Just did not accept it. They're like, but I could get so on board if you just, and I'm like, well,
I don't need you to get on board.
I don't need you to get on board. And also I've noticed that I'm the one raising money to make this movie, not you. So if I'm raising the money and I'm paying to make this happen, I think I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want.
Right.
Because, and that's.
Do you feel like that sentiment might even have been exaggerated by just the very nature of the academic setting? The kind of bubble that professors and teachers kind of build around themselves.
Yes, I do, but it also is one I have encountered outside of that as well. I have encountered some weird stuff with that movie in particular, more so than other ones I've worked on, that I wrote, directed, etc. That one in particular seems to stick in people's craw. I think it's because it's a sex industry story that's neither a like happy hooker, like this is empowering and great, and but it's also not I'm a poor victim, this was so terrible, how could I have endured it? It's just, this is a normal thing some people do. Here are some of the specific ways that stresses can manifest. Small talk specifically is more about like kind of having trouble regulating one's fight or flight response in the brain, and what if one's fight or flight response had some sort of like telekinetic power behind it. So when you wanted to fight, whether or not you actually physically throw a punch, your brain just telekinetically fights for you. That's what small talk's about, like in a phone sex context, and it is about that specifically, but it's not just about that. It's about having to put up with shit in service industry work in general, because there's a lot of commonality, some differences, but a lot of commonality.
I mean, I like the idea of putting sex work in the forefront as far as like a service industry job, because it really, it is the ultimate service industry if you think about it. It's like everybody is basically giving of their time and their bodies in return for cash, hopefully, and it's often abusive, and the less cash the more abuse. It's weird. It's like there's a weird balance of like the less people are willing to pay you, the more abuse they expect you to take, which is really, I don't know, the world without unions.
It is. It really is, which, that's bringing me back to thinking about the possibilities of unionizing the call center that I worked at once upon a time, and being like, that is a really tall order, in part because labor unions, this may be changing more. And there are some exceptions, but in general, like, it's a tall order if you work at like a phone sex call center, which that call center doesn't exist anymore. It's even harder to unionize those industries now because it's largely people working remotely, not like even in a workplace together like we used to. But most big labor unions, they might have some bigotry, things like that that make them a little hesitant to want to help.
Having been a member of a couple of unions in my time, I have found that union members do tend to skew towards the conservative end on the social level, mostly because like working people tend to be a little more conservative, and also,
I mean, I think like the sex industry bigotry, that's so across the board. Like, it's so much better now in a lot of respects. Like I can talk about some of these issues now and people are very receptive. Younger people, the
Right.
younger generations are really like just have their shit a lot more together on top of this, and it's kind of wild because I remember when I first got this job back in 2001, it was not like this. There was not like a whole kind of cultural idea out there that it like sex workers had particular unfair issues to deal with, having to do with criminality, or even if you were working in an area that wasn't theoretically illegal, there's always these weird gray area things that can happen at any time with like payments and all sorts of things like that.
Right.
And that it's fucked up. And you know, young people are pretty good about this, but like in the early 2000s, like you go around talking about stuff like this, and outside of certain circles, it's, you know, I might as well have had 3 heads, honestly.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Like it was not cute. It was not popular.
So we're gonna go to a clip from Mayor right about now. And we're back from the clip from Mare.
This was a film I directed. Again, we co-wrote it. The main impetus, if your viewers have seen Small Talk, they might understand that I tend to write scripts that are very talky. I tend to write a lot of dialogue.
Mhm.
That's what comes naturally to me. And for me, one of the main points of Mare is to not do that because it is a film with no dialogue.
Oh, was it like an exercise, would you say?
Kind of like Sean had an idea. Sean had an idea for a story. I just wanted to direct something. He's like, hey, I kind of want to do something about like this Celtic myth about like it's a demon that comes and like kneels on people's chests while they're asleep. And if like you have a nightmare and certain things happen, it's supposed to be, oh, actually this demon is like sucking the breath out of you. And that's why, you know, and I was like, well, that sounds fun. And gave us, so for me, yeah, it kind of was an exercise that makes it very different from pretty much anything else I've done. But it was fun. I was like, I want to do this. It'll have, and Sean wanted to do it with no dialogue, I believe, just because that makes production easier, which
Right.
I was very on board with that as well. But I was also like, ooh, great. That makes it a fun challenge for me also, though, to like write and direct something that isn't like about, you know, people talking at each other.
Come here. Oh, don't hurt me, please don't. Please don't.
So we have a huge audience of aspiring filmmakers, just vast numbers of people who just want to get in on some of this filmmaking action. Do you have any advice? Like what, like advice that you would give? So like, you know, a young kid who's like just coming out of school or like watching shows, you know, like watching The Mandalorian.
Okay.
And just saying like, how do I do this for like a living or even not a living?
Well, yeah, because those are two different things. Do you want to work in production for a living, or do you have stories you feel the need to tell through film? Those two things can go together. I'm not trying to say it's, you know, but like I don't make a living in production. In fact, and I've been thinking about this a lot, what with the strike that probably already started last week, maybe? We'll have to
They
check
are
the
voting
papers.
on it October 1st.
Oh, okay. So, okay. I'm not going to do the math right now of when this episode is airing
Right. They're
in
voting
relation
on
to
it
that.
as right about now.
Great. And so that got me thinking about how, you know, once upon a time I thought about trying to, you know, do production regularly as a source of money. Specifically, art department seemed to be where I would go to, like, you know, get hired and get paid to like help make movie magic or whatever. And I said, I don't want this to be my job. These hours are fucking terrible. I'm not built for it. It stresses me out. I have to really care about a production for it to be worth it for me to like deal with all this shit. You know, like I'm an introvert. I want to be at home, you know, watching TV, watching cats.
Yeah.
Maybe eating an edible. That's what I want to be doing. Not working, you know, 12 plus hour days and, you know,
every day.
Yeah, it's like it's such a grind, and like you get into it and then it gets like normal.
Yeah.
But it does wear you out. And like I at a certain point in my life was like, you know what, I'm gonna prioritize getting enough sleep.
Mm-hmm.
It makes all the difference in the world for my mental health. It makes all the difference in the world for my physical health. When I'm not getting enough sleep, I'm not as good, I'm not as sharp, I'm not as productive, I'm not as happy. I know this about myself. So let me try to actually, you know, sleep is free. The only thing it costs you is like hours you in theory could be working and earning a wage or whatever. So fuck that.
But what are you doing? You know, like what? You're not actually more effective if you're getting less sleep, even if you're putting in more hours, right? It's actually probably a lot worse.
Exactly. Yeah. That's been my experience at least. And I also was getting really fatigued of like in film, but also in other areas of my life, certainly in any area of like activism or community organizing.
Right.
There especially used to be like such this like premium put on, oh, we're all exhausted I did like a competition for who got the least sleep, basically, of like
Yeah.
who's the most over. And I'm like, I just want to, I would like to
Why did that
exempt
become a
myself from
competition?
this. Like, because it's whose interest does that serve?
Right.
Whose interest does that serve? You know, to have us all racing to be who's the most like good little worker bee. Like, fuck
Exactly.
that. Just no. And I don't, and also like art department isn't my like main passion. It's something I like doing. You know, but I was just like, no, I would rather just keep doing freelance, like mostly post-production stuff and like teach, you know, and do all the crap I do to pay bills. Because I don't want to work those hours. I don't want to deal with the fucking conditions that people are voting on a strike over, where under the best of times, even when it's not the like really extreme stuff where it's like someone just dropped dead and they just wheeled them out and we just kept rolling.
Yeah, you read that article too. Hollywood doesn't work without blood, sweat, and tears for fears. That's the beauty. That's the beauty of it. Like, you know, when you see that, like, what do you think? You know, when we were talking about Cats, that was the thing that we love. We love that they just poured their entire guts into the production. Like, how does a movie work without that? You can't have this lackadaisical, you know, people can't just like want to just have a chill life and make these amazing pieces of art. It takes abuse.
I mean, there is a saying, and if it's a saying, it must be true, that, you know, you have to suffer for your art.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
Yeah, you know, this is really making me do some soul searching, because all of these like labor conditions and how horrific they are have been really bothering me. But maybe I'm just looking at it from the wrong angle, because it is, you know, kind of shitty and painful going through life just being like, oh wow, this sucks, all these people are getting hurt and it doesn't have to be this way. But if I wanted more pain and suffering,
it's just about who wants it more.